Villains. Every piece of media has a villain in some way. Batman has the Joker, the Avengers have Thanos, and for me, it is the rising prices of LEGO sets. And Ninjago is no different. We obviously have the main villains for each season, the Garmadons, Chens, and Lord Rises of the world, but today we're going to be giving some love to the side characters, the henchmen of the main villains if you will, as today we're going to be ranking every Ninjago villain army, and there are quite a few of them, so I think we just have to get right into it. So starting in the pilot, we have the Skullkin army. So the main people of this army are of course Serpentine, and Cruncher and Knuckle, and we don't really see these guys all too much, really for only 2 episodes, but for these 2 episodes, Cruncher and Knuckle did bring a few enjoyable moments, but the overall Skullkin army as a whole really didn't get up to all that much. They don't really have much uniqueness to them, and their designs are also pretty bare bones, if you know what I mean. So for these reasons, I'm gonna have to stick them into the D tier, because the F tier is going to be kept for the villains that I absolutely hate. So now let's move on to Season 1. And who were the main villains in Season 1? The Serpentine, of course. And I'm going to keep this one short and simple. They are obviously going to be going into the S tier. They are easily the most iconic villain army of the entire series, and there is just so much variety to them. There are 5 different tribes within the one army, and for each tribe there are like 6 or 7 unique designs in which mostly all of them look really cool. Each tribe also has their own special powers. The Hypnobrai hypnotize people, the Fangpie can turn anything into a snake just by biting it, the Constrictor can dig into the ground, the Venomari can make you feel like you were high, and the Anacondrai, well, they are cannibals. Anyway, the Serpentine are potentially the best villain army, so it was never in doubt that they would be going right into the S tier. And moving on to Season 2, the villain army we have here is the Stone Army, and here we have our first villain army that I would say have wasted potential. And the reason I say this is because the Stone Army in concept are very cool. They are indestructible and handcrafted by the Overlord himself, and they should be really cool. And they do look it, but in the show they're very bland, and yes, this is mainly down to the reason that they can only speak the ancient stone language, but they also don't do anything like at all. So just for their concept and design, I will be putting them into the C tier. And in Season 3 we have the Nindroids. So the Nindroids are a very unique type of villain army, as they are evil robots, which does fit the whole theme of the season very well. But just like the Stone Army, they face one key problem: they lack a personality. They are also just emotionless drones who really didn't do all that much except Cryptor and my fellow Short King Nindroid. Also, all of their designs are exactly the same, and that one design isn't that interesting. So for that reason, I'm gonna also have to put them into the C tier. And now on to Season 4, we move on to another very good villain army, the Anacondrai worshippers from Chen's Island. So let me get my one criticism of them out of the way: their designs. Now I don't actually have a problem with their designs, because on their own they're actually quite cool. They have Anacondrai tattoos all over them, and their hats are also cool as well. My only problem is that they all just look very similar, apart from Izor and that other guy with armor that I forgot the name of. But on the other hand, the Anacondrai henchmen technically have 2 designs, as they also turn into the real Anacondrai, and obviously, just like the Serpentine, they do look very cool. And moving away from their designs, what I really like about this army is their personalities. It is always good when a villain army has a few members that actually stand out. And my favorites of this army are Chop and Kapow, because they just bring so much personality and humor into the show, and are just very underrated overall. So altogether, I think that the Anacondrai henchmen deserve to go into the A tier as well. And Season 5 continues the good villain army trend, as we have the Ghosts. The Ghosts are very cool villains from both a show and design perspective. In the show, they are deceased warriors that were cursed to the departed realm that Moro has released so they could help him release the preeminent. Also in the show, the 3 main ghosts other than Moro of course are quite decent. The Soul Archer has that whole side plot with Ronin, which was really interesting. I just wish we knew more about it. Banshee has that screaming power that we see a few times, and Goltar is the comic relief character that just eats a lot and dances to the Ghostbusters theme song, which I just love to watch every time I rewatch Season 5. And you know what's even better? Their designs. They are translucent and all unique and all look absolutely amazing. They top the A tier easily, and they were on the verge of going into S tier. The only thing stopping me from doing so is that I just think the Serpentine are on a completely another level. But you know what army is on the same level as the Serpentine? The Sky Pirates. And you know what? They might even be better. The Sky Pirates are all super unique characters, and they have a variety of different personalities and designs. They also have their own backstories where Narcon all tried to trick them into joining him, which you see in those shorts. And they honestly all made Skybound an even better season. And yeah, I do think the Sky Pirates are a better army than the Serpentine due to the fact that they are all distinct from each other. And Season 7 brings us back to reality with the Vermillion. So after 3 seasons in a row with really good villain armies, we have our first duds in a while. So these guys are quite boring, as they basically only have 2 designs, red or orange, and these designs are quite boring in the show. However, I do really like the minifigure versions for whatever reason. Anyway, in the show, the vast majority of them are just there and do nothing, apart from Commander Blanc and Ragmonk, who remind me a lot of Chop and Kapow, as they also bring a lot of personality and humour to the Vermillion army, which this season is very short of. Anyway, the only thing that really sets these guys apart from the Serpentine is the fact that they can get defeated easily, but not entirely, and it doesn't take much to absolutely obliterate them, but they can quickly rebuild themselves, as the Vermillion are made up of like dozens of tiny snakes. So anyway, I think the Vermillion deserve the D tier, and the only thing saving them from F is Blanc and Ragmonk. And now we go back to the good villain armies, as we have the Sons of Garmadon. Season 8 was already a good season. We didn't need a good army of villains in the season, but we did, and I am not complaining. The main members of this gang are Mr. E, Ultraviolet, and Kilo. Mr. E is a quiet, mysterious Nindroid who has a big rivalry with Zane. Ultraviolet is a crazy psychopath who kind of reminds me of the Joker from Batman, except I think she is even crazier. And Kilo is basically a sumo wrestler. These guys are all so cool, both show and design wise, and even the side characters are nice as well, as I really bring the gang aesthetic together. There is a reason these guys lasted 2 seasons. They deserve to go in the A tier. And continuing in the Oni trilogy, we have the Dragon Hunters from Hunted. And I don't really know what people's thoughts on them are, but even if the consensus is that they were really boring, well, I would still say that they are overrated, because what do these guys even do? I mean, when the main guy of your army is the Iron Baron, your army is already doomed from the very beginning. Anyway, there are a few notable characters in the Dragon Hunters ranks, such as Daddy No Legs and Jetjack, but for the most part, they were both really one-dimensional characters and didn't really bring much to the show. And I guess one good Dragon Hunter you could throw in is Faith, but she was on the ninja side longer than the Dragon Hunters. Also, the designs of these characters are really plain and boring. These guys go at the bottom of the list so far in the D tier. And joining them in D tier will be the Oni from March of the Oni. The only thing that really saves them from being an F tier is just name tags, because obviously the Oni are very important to the overall story of Ninjago, so I have to give them some credit for that. But now onto the bad. They are boring, shallow, and bring nothing to the table other than just being there really. Also, their designs are a bit boring, and just like the Hunters, with Omega as your leader, you are never gonna be interesting. And sticking with boring villains, and for me, these are easily the worst ones so far. They are just snake mummies, which is cool in concept, but they were very poorly executed. There was only really one member of this army that I remember who was Shah, and from memory, he was just annoying. And I thought when I started this video, the F tier would be empty, but no, Asphira's army will go into that tier. And also in Season 11, we had the Ice Warriors. So these guys were actually a little bit interesting. They had their own backstory in which they were warriors that Zane throws, which all turned them evil. Their designs are also really nice. I'm a sucker for any translucent minifigure part. And in the show, these guys also get some cool things to do, like attacking the ninjas village. There are even some notable characters like Vex, of course, and also that one guy that freed Lloyd from the prison cell. These guys are nothing special, but I do think they have enough to get themselves into the D tier. And potentially joining the F tier are the Prime Empire bots. And these guys just didn't get much screen time. They were in the show for like 5 minutes max, and were just there to be a small obstacle for the ninja. And they never really did all that much from there. Honestly, however, I will give them some credit as their designs are not too bad, but that is not enough to save them from the F tier. So we have had a lot of different Serpentine villains over the years, and now we have our first duplicate of another species, this time being skeletons. And the skeletons I'm referring to are the ones from Master of the Mountain. And these guys were just absolutely useless. To put this into perspective, these guys were so bad, the LEGO designers had to make the Geckos and Monsters the main villains in the sets just because these guys were so boring. They are just plain skeletons with no personalities, unlike the original skeleton army. And in fact, the only thing going for them is the fact that the Skull Sorcerer's mask can kind of like revive them, but that is a very small win at that. So yeah, these guys will most definitely finish at the bottom of this list without a shadow of a doubt. And now we have the Merlopian from Seabound, and these guys are actually kind of alright. We of course have Kalmar, who is one of my favourite main Ninjago villains of recent times. And from memory, there are a few other notable Merlopians as well. The only thing is that I can't forget all of their names, but I think that is just because I haven't seen this season that much. Anyway, I do feel like these guys fit the whole underwater aesthetic really well, which I guess is pretty obvious because they're literally eels. Also, I'm pretty sure they were also quite decent villains as well. They're nothing special, but they firmly deserve to go in the C tier. And now on to Crystallized, we have the Vengestone army. So in my opinion, these guys have one huge upside and then one or two very big downsides. Starting with the positives, it is of course their design. I think everyone can agree that these are some of the best Skullkin and Jog villain minifigures we have ever gotten, and when these sets were coming out, that seemed to be a lot of people's thoughts. But now onto the downsides. For one, they don't do anything like at all, and two, the whole thing is that they're made from Vengestone so they can stop the ninja's powers, but they do so little in the season that we probably only see this happen like 1 or 2 times at the absolute max. So the design purely saves them from the F tier, as they are just that good, so I think D tier it is. We're now onto the home stretch, as we have now officially made it into Dragons Rising. So the first Dragons Rising villains we will be ranking is the Imperium Dragon Hunters. So immediately, I just want to say that these Dragon Hunters are way better than the previous ones, as there are a lot of characters from this army that actually add to the show. I actually find Raptor enjoyable to watch on screen in Season 1 at least, not so much in Season 2 and especially 3. Dr. LaRoe is also quite a decent antagonist for Sora, and Lord Raz is also technically a member of this army, so that obviously elevates them quite a bit. They also had a few scenes that were decently funny as well. The only negative with them is their designs. They aren't bad by any means, don't really stand out if you get what I mean. Anyway, these guys fill out the C tier on our list. And now onto the villains for Season 2, we have the Wolf Masks. So let's start with their designs, which are quite cool. I like the mix of blue and purple, and the masks also look really nice. However, as I have said for a lot of these villains, they really didn't do anything. In fact, I only remember one scene of them fighting the ninja, and that was when Kai, Sora, and Wildfire stripped them, and that is quite unfortunate, as I feel like these guys did have some decent potential, as they all have shattered their goodness to be in this army. So it would have been cool to see maybe one of them, you know, do something like crazily bad, or maybe on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, maybe we could see one of them show regret and remorse for their actions. Anyway, they go in D tier. And finally, we have the Dragoonians. And why not? Let's throw the Forbidden 5 into here as well, because let's be real, most of them felt like generic side villains anyway. So the Dragoonians were quite bad, and that isn't really their fault, because they of course had to share the stage with the Forbidden 5. They were also not real villains, as they were of course possessed and forced to be villains. However, one positive with them is their design. Their regular versions are quite nice, I like the red, and then the spectral ones do look very cool, and I've already expressed how I like transparent minifigures. And then with the Forbidden 5, they were obviously a massive missed potential, probably the biggest in the show's history. And it is a real shame that they were treated how they were, especially when Dragons Rising has a really good track record at writing characters for the most part. So I will put the Dragoonians in a low D tier because I like their designs. And I guess the Forbidden 5 should go into C tier because I guess some of their designs and powers are pretty cool. So after taking a look at this list, I've just realised how bad most Ninjago villain armies actually are, as the vast majority of them are either in the D or F tier. Let me know if I was being too harsh, and if you want to see a similar video, I recommend that you go watch my video where I ranked every Ninjago villain based off how evil they are. Trust me, there's actually some surprises in there. Anyway, thank you for watching, and see you later. Be Ninja.